This is Environmental Science 1, Chapter 2 on Living Things in Ecosystems. In this portion of the video lecture, we will be discussing how everything is connected in ecosystems and kind of go through a list of who's who in the ecosystem. Remember, ecology is how we study not just the organisms themselves, but how they interact with each other and how those organisms interact with the physical environment or the ecosystem. So the ecosystem is interacting parts of both the physical, which would be the habitat itself, and the biological world, which would be the organisms that inhabit it. In an ecosystem, of course, there are living parts. Those are the biotic factors. Remember, the stem bio means living. So anything that's living in an ecosystem is considered biotic. This would also be considered something that died or is decomposing. If it's organic, then it's biotic. Abiotic factors are the non-living parts of the ecosystem, the physical parts of the ecosystem. Remember, when you put a or an in front of a science word, it means no or without. So the abiotic factors are the non-living parts of the ecosystem. We'll take a look at how everything is organized within the ecosystem. If you remember from biology, we started at the organism level as well, and we kind of went down from there. This time we're going to take that and ramp it and go up the other way. So an organism is an individual living thing. So there we have, we'll say Gary the goldfish. Gary the goldfish plus every other fish that looks like Gary the goldfish and that we can reproduce with Gary the goldfish would be considered a species. So a species is a group of organisms that can successfully reproduce together, and they generally resemble each other. Once you put in Gary the goldfish all together in an area with all of the other goldfish, then you would have a population. So that's a group of organisms of one species hanging out in a particular area. The ecosystem is kind of set up in patches. So individuals form populations in patches, and those patches can vary with resources. A population's limit or boundary can be either a natural boundary or it could be imposed by some sort of geographic limit. Generally, where the resources start to thin out in a population's area, that's generally kind of the boundary of many populations out in nature. Besides Gary the goldfish in our, let's say, our pond ecosystem, we have a lot of other things living there. So a community is an association of a lot of interacting populations of different species where they live. And so this is where we're going to see a lot of these interactions with other organisms, is in the community. An organism has kind of a way of life. It has its to-do list every day. It needs to go out and find food and water and space and shelter and mates, if you remember the big four resources of competition from biology. So the niche of an organism is the ranges and conditions that that organism can tolerate, and it's kind of the way of life that it pursues. So it's an organism's ecological role. For example, here the wolf. The wolf's niche would be that it lives in packs. So there's an alpha male and an alpha female that are allowed to breed. They have a hierarchy system. They tend to live in dens or some sort of shelter. They tend to hunt by themselves. So that would be kind of like the wolf's niche or ecological role. Don't forget, because we're talking about the ecosystem here and an ecological role, this is going to include both the biotic and abiotic parts of the ecosystem. Niches are very distinctive because every organism is distinctive. So every organism will have its particular way that it carries out its ecological role. So the habitat is the physical setting where the organism lives. So this is the physical parts, abiotics, or the habitats. And it's characterized by some sort of dominant feature. For example, in a forest ecosystem, we would have maybe deciduous or spruce trees being a dominant feature. In a desert ecosystem, we may have certain types of cacti or trees being a dominant feature. Way deep down in the ocean, the dominant feature could be perhaps the level of light that can get through the water column. So different fish would live in these different areas depending on how much light is available to them. So these are habitats, the physical setting where an organism lives. And this has been part 1 of Chapter 2, Living Things in Ecosystems.